So, with today's episode, there's a whole lot of people that are going to be able to connect to the aspect of grief. And what I want to talk a little bit about today is how to navigate through grief, but also growing. And those are two really challenging things, but I believe are possible. And as we go through today's episode, I wanted to share my own personal journey. We could reference books, different worksheets. Today, I'm going to use something that's happened in my own life and I've shared on a number of occasions. And at points, I've tried not to share. And it's hard for me not to because it's a part of me. It's a part of why I'm in this field. It's a very driving part of my passion and how I live life. And so with that, I wanted to share that with you today. Grief is very layered. It's very multifaceted and it's very individualized. You can read heaps of books and things online that can be absolutely helpful. But remembering in all things your grief, your journey, and that grief that maybe you aren't experiencing, but someone that you love is experiencing, care for, it's individualized. So there's no blueprint map to how this works. But I do believe that there's power and significance in learning from other people's stories, their journey, and learning the power of how do I get through this, as well as the aspect of empathy. So April 6th, 1999, the world of myself and many other people changed in a blink of an eye. My sister and her four friends were it was the morning. They were driving to the beach. They were going to make a left-hand turn at an intersection in Kill Devil Hills of North Carolina. And they were T-boned by a drunk driver by the name of Melissa Marvin. And in that moment that I, for years, had gone through kind of like in freeze frame motion, if you will, of what happened and how it could have changed and all that jazz, which if you go through grief, that in itself can be really a struggle. And it's coming to the realization that we're not God, thankfully, and that we cannot change the past. And that's something that can really beat the living heck out of you at saying you can't change what's happening. Getting wrapped up in what was also impacts what is, where it makes our grief compounded, harder. It's so easy to become bitter and angry. And grief, again, like I said before, it is so individualized and it's so forever. And I believe the acuity for people hearing this, over time, it changes. We hear the term "time heals all wounds." I firmly don't believe that. On April 12th, actually, my sister survived for 6 days and then she passed away on April 12th. Megan, Angela, and Amanda passed away that day, and Mike, very thankfully, was the lone survivor. I'm grateful that he's here. But with that, it's a whole lot to process. It's allowing yourself permission to say this acute pain that I don't know when it's not going to be this acute. I don't know when I'm not going to hurt so much, but I know one day I won't hurt as much. And it's giving your permission to be kind to yourself. I do believe through different stages of grief, we can really be hard on ourselves. We can be unkind to ourselves where, we go for days without sleeping, or we neglect ourselves because it's so easy to do. And this is where it's taking time through this process that we take time to sleep where our bodies need it, but it's not excessive where we're just lapsing into depression. And again, I'm saying this years and years later from losing my sister, but I went through a number of years of just being angry. I was angry at the world. I was angry at God. I was angry at Melissa Marvin. I was just angry, and I became bitter because I was very much trapped in what happened at that time and not able to move forward. And again, everybody's journey is their own, but I believe grief, unfortunately, touches so many people. And on the other end of it, for those, thankfully, that maybe it hasn't touched you, I will say it's so important to be in tune with people that you care about who are grieving. And there are things to say, and there are things that are not to be said. As human beings, sometimes we feel like we just, if we're present, or in front of somebody we have to say something, and that's not always the case. Sometimes truly simply just being present, or if you're a long distance away, sending a text or an email, or just an uplifting, meaningful video and shooting it to the person can really go far. Sometimes people really, and I say this to people hearing this, that if you are going through grief, or if you've been on the other end of it and you've said something where people can say things sometimes that are just, shouldn't have been said, it will get better. You'll get over it. I've had people say it over the years, it's been that many years, and you're still going through this, or you're still in this field because of what happened. I'm still in this field. And I will until I take my last breath. And know this, those of you who have experienced grief, wherever you are in terms of your pain and your hurt, more than likely that hurt will stick with you until you take your last breath. And it's coming to that realization that that's okay. That's okay, but allowing yourself permission, giving yourself permission to go forward, give yourself permission to continue living life. We can be hard on ourselves and refrain from self-care. We can refrain from allowing ourselves feeling guilty, smiling or living or going forward. And you hit these different milestones, whether it's a college graduation, marriage, kids, other friends, whatever it is, there can be a lot of stuff involved there. And this is where, when it comes to us experiencing it directly, knowing it's okay to talk to somebody, reaching out to somebody, whether that's a therapist, whether that's even, you're talking to a friend. I'm having a bad day. Can we go get a cup of coffee? Hey, would you mind if we chat a little bit? And knowing that encouragement is really part of the journey. It is so part of the journey. Another aspect of the journey is the ability for forgiveness. And that comes in a lot of different facets. And this may or may not apply to different people listening to this, that we can kind of feel at times, our brains are strange, right? Depending on the situation of how you lost somebody, that you could be thinking, you not necessarily blame yourself, but you beat yourself up for them not being here, right? I know I had no responsibility in terms of like anything dealing with my sister not being here, but I still had this element of this heaviness that I just wore, and where it was on my shoulders, and it hurt. And it was this process that I beat the living heck out of myself. And during this personal journey, it was me coming to the realization, for me, again, everything's individualized. It was, I can't keep doing this. I'm beating myself up. I got to a point, I was very angry. I was just angry. I hated the person. I hated Melissa Marvin with all my heart. I wanted her to die. You took my sister, and you took 4 human beings and the hundreds of other people, hundreds and hundreds that were impacted by this. Like, that's not fair. And I came to the realization, for me personally, that anger that was transforming into bitterness was actually making me another victim. And that wasn't fair. It was not fair to the memory of the girls. And so it was actually at a point, I was actually in a church service in Nags Head, North Carolina. For me, I was just wearing this heaviness. And I remember this song, Shout to the Lord, came on, right? I still and it was a song that my sister Jessie and I walked my sister out, out with her service, blah. And I remember just like, I can't do this anymore. And just getting up and just literally, not very subtly, just like, I think I slammed the door walking out of church, and I just ran across the street to the beach. And it was my time in my life that I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I remember just crying out to God and saying, God, take this from me. I can't hate this woman anymore. I can't hate myself. I don't want to feel like I just don't want to be here anymore. I need you to just take this from me. And it was at that moment, like literally this heaviness that came off of my shoulders, that I am not in control. I have to incorporate an aspect of forgiveness in my life, because if I don't, myself, Melissa Marvin, and all this blame that I was carrying, these shackles, it was absolutely depleting my quality of life, and it was hurting the people around me. So asking you and thinking about you as an individual, if this is something you've been through where, man, I'm beating myself up, knowing It's okay to forgive yourself for whatever is going on in your mind. It's okay to release things. And I will say with Melissa Marvin, I have forgiven her for what she has done. That does not make her exempt from accountability. I believe that with my whole heart. We have a very, very an epidemic within our judicial system that there's no accountability. There's no accountability. She, I will say, is that she got 65 years in prison. Would be considered extreme. Unfortunately, that's the case. It shouldn't be considered extreme. If you take a life, there needs to be accountability. It wasn't an accident. It was getting behind the wheel, being under the influence. And there's so many instances. You turn on the TV today, somebody takes somebody's life. Human trafficking. This, where somebody's life is taken. And part of my belief, this is going a little off track here, firmly, is the fact that there's no accountability. You go to jail for the rest of your life for doing something where you take someone's life, people start thinking about what they're doing. But until that point, we are in a very unbalanced society. And that's kind of my 2 cents. And with that, I have forgiven the woman who took the life of Shayna, Megan, Angela, and Amanda, but it doesn't make it exempt for her, the accountability factor. And I believe that within all my heart. We are on our journey. I also believe it's so important when we're that person who is just listening and who is present, not to say we know how you feel, because every single case, everybody's different. I'm here for you. I empathize for you. Whatever you need, I'm here. And sometimes it's just letting somebody cry. Sometimes it's just allowing yourself to breathe and knowing grief is layered. I also do, this is what I've found through my journey, everybody's different, allowing the pain I had to be funneled towards a passion. And for me, it's become mental health. It's become getting up in front of people and speaking and talking about taking care of ourselves and just being in a good place and a high quality of life, to life coaching, to, podcasting and talking about this topic. It's a passion of mine. And so that is not for everybody being sparked to have a passion through their grief. But I will say finding something that continues to drive you, that can be connected, can truly be helpful. And whether that's, I'm now volunteering at a food bank, frequently because of this loss that I've experienced. Or I'm donating my time here, or I'm becoming active in this, whatever it is. I know I had the privilege of interviewing a woman, Leora Tejgi. I met her actually in Jerusalem. And I remember her sharing her story with me that, years ago, she was walking down the road in Jerusalem. She was a victim of a terrorist attack. She was pregnant with twins. The explosion went off. She lost one of her babies. Sitting in the hospital, she had come to the point, like, I could become bitter, or I could be fueled by this to make a difference. And that's what she did. And you fast forward 35 something years later, she's one of the biggest outreach programs in all of Israel, where they're feeding hundreds and hundreds of people every week. They're now educating young people. They're providing hope. And it was spurred by grief, by loss. And someone listening might be like, there's no way I could do that, Aaron. And maybe not, but I'd say pray about it. Seek some answers, peace, direction, because sometimes if we just get in a point of treading water with grief, it can kick our butts. And I am certainly not the know-all when it comes to grief. I'm not. But I will say allowing ourselves to find a connection is a beautiful thing. Allowing ourselves permission to do something with our hurt is monumental. But every single one of us is different. I will also say on this note, there are times with whatever, you have experienced with grief. One of mine obviously comes from, at the hands of a drunk driver. And I go back to so many times in my life where there are situations where people just simply stayed quiet, that could have prevented a loss, that could have prevented pain, that could have changed and altered history for someone. And too much often in our society, we've become, I've seen where people like videotaping people getting beaten up or even murdered or whatever the heck it is, and no one doing anything. Just mind your own business. Just stay quiet. Well, to that I say that's bullcrap. That is the easy way to go out. To me, that's a coward's way of going out. I have become fueled greater over the years that I don't care what you think of me, but if I see you're somewhere, and this is where I really very much don't have too much of a social life, you're out and somebody's drank too much and they're going to go to their car, I will intervene. I will speak up. I've been in situations where I've seen someone raise a hand, to somebody else. And I've gotten involved. And I always say be smart and be safe about whatever you're getting involved with, but you can very discreetly and quickly call the police if you see something, or speaking up at an establishment to let the management or whoever know whatever the situation is. As human beings, it is our choice, but it is also something we must do to speak up. I'll tell you, it'll help you sleep better at night. And I do think about that day, April 6, 1999, if one person, and there were multiple people, and they know who they are, that on that day they chose silence. She was at 2 bars. She was at a surf shop. She had a reputation for just kind of floating around and being intoxicated. I remember going to a bank maybe a few weeks or a month after the crash, and somebody saying, "Yeah, man, I'm so sorry. She was in here. She'd be in here all the time, and she would be drunk." And you never said anything? Nah, there's something wrong with that. We need to do better as a society and allow yourself to know if you're experiencing grief right now. No, you're not alone. You are not alone. And this journey is one that you don't have to take alone. I'd encourage you to reach out to somebody. I encourage you to seek counseling. You can hop online or asking a friend or, contacting different organizations within your zip code that provide counseling, whether even if in a group context, can be super powerful. Not going at it alone. And I also believe so firmly in the power of prayer and finding, seeking and asking for peace and direction, and know it's okay to be angry. Anger is a normal emotion. It's just allowing ourselves to process anger in a healthy way that it doesn't become bitterness. Because that, my friend, is a level of toxicness that can really eat away our inner core and change who we are. And you are more valued and more amazing than that. And I realize now, years later, looking back, and there's been many people that I've loved over the years who are no longer here in these past 20 years, many. And so what I've learned is just the ability to just take a deep breath, to pray, to cry, to hurt, to process, and to just find ways to funnel and to find ways to be fueled. And I know in my heart, I do believe, this is my belief, that, there are no tears, there's no hurt, there's no sense, I would say, of time in heaven, but I do believe with all my heart. There have been times I felt that I know my sister can see me. I do, and a smile on her face. And I know with all my heart, that she'd be proud. So I know this. It's been 20 years, and I will miss her until I take my last breath. But know you are worth fighting for. Know through your grief that you will be okay. Do not go at it alone. Reach out for help. For those of you on the other end, encourage. It's uncomfortable being a wingman for someone experiencing grief. It is. But be there. Be present. Encourage. Love. Hey, let's go for a walk. Let's go sit and just have a cup of coffee and breathe some fresh air. Because we're not meant to travel this road alone. And know that God loves you. Seeking peace, seeking direction, and seeking wisdom through a really rough and rocky road. I promise if it wasn't for my relationship with God, I tell you from the bottom of my heart, where I was for a solid 2.5 years, I would not be here today. And for that, I am grateful to be able to be here, and I consider it a gift. But as we go on our journey, know that you're not alone. Know that you are cared for, that you are valued. And as we go forward, I'm wishing you a tremendous amount of peace, love, and goodness.